Welcome, everyone. Wow, that's loud. To this regular city council meeting. Technically, it's a special city council meeting. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Sylvia, please.
Mayor Middleton.
Get over.
Here.
Council President Henderson.
Here.
Councilor Folsom.
Here.
Councilor Grant.
Here.
Councilor Butterfield.
Here.
Councilor Langer.
Here.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Thank you.
So tonight, this special regular city council meeting is to go over a resolution and a lot of documentation regarding ballot titles and explanatory statements that we would like to refer to the voters in the May election. We have a pending for the ballot titles as well as the explanatory statements to our city recorder, and then she in turn will forward them on to Washington County, and that due date is March 20th. So we have a staff report, if staff would like to, and or I have requested Pat Allen, who was our chair, and Neil Shannon is also here, our vice chair, to come up and maybe address the council and citizens who may listen or watch later about the process they went through to reach the proposed ballot titles.
Council President Henderson, I will start this, but I'm going to have, hopefully, Chair Allen and Vice Chair Neil Shannon come up and do the bulk of the presentation because they did the bulk of the work over the last few months. I think City Recorder Sylvia Murphy and I are here to answer questions, along with Ed Sullivan. To my right, Ed is special counsel
Yes,
that we brought in very recently to help us craft this language. You may recall that there was a feeling both on the Charter Review Committee and on the council that since Peary, Elsner, and Hammond were the lead attorneys putting together the League of Oregon Cities model charter, that it would be best to have outside counsel. And Mr. Sullivan's done a very good job. He came on board late last week, so he did a very good job dealing with all the work from the Charter Review Committee. The Charter Review Committee, just as background, started their work back in December. They've been meeting at least every 2 weeks, sometimes every week, to go over two sections of the charter that was very important when you created them. You wanted to have election-related items, or the direction you gave them is to have election-related items in front of you early enough so the council could consider putting them on the May 20th election. They've met that goal. You had a work session with them tonight. They're here to explain the 5 separate ballot titles for your consideration. That you can choose all 5 to put on the ballot. You can choose 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, whatever you want. This is different than the last time, you may recall, where there were a number of changes that the city recommended and everything was in one vote. You either voted yes or no on all the changes, and we've broken that out for a variety of reasons, and Chair Allen can explain that to you. So with that introduction, if Chair Allen and Vice Chair Shannon can come up.
Thanks very much, Council President Henderson, members of the council. My name is Patrick Allen. I've had the privilege of chairing the Charter Review Committee, and Vice Chair Shannon and I would like to spend a few minutes kind of giving you the background and the history, and then running through the provisions that we have recommended to you for passing on to the citizens. Before I start, I just wanted to call out the various folks who served with us on this on this committee. As you know, you set this committee up with at-large citizens, of which I'm one, and representatives of various boards and committees around the city to capture a variety of perspectives and interest groups and those sorts of things. Our committee consisted of myself as a member at large, Neil, the vice chair, as a representative of the budget committee, Beth Cook as a representative of the planning commission, Jennifer Kuiper, also a citizen at large, Jack Hofber from the Library Advisory Board, Elise Vordermark from the Cultural Arts Commission, Brian Stetcher from the Parks Advisory Board, and Bob Silverforb also as a citizen at large, and then Renee Browse was our alternate. And I think they're all here tonight and joined us in the work session a little bit earlier, and I really appreciate all of their hard work as well as city staffs in getting us through a fairly breakneck process. Let me spend a couple of minutes talking about the process that we went through. As City Manager Gall observed, you wanted us to focus particularly on election-related issues, and that really imposed a calendar on us. If we wanted to have the next election be impacted by changes to the amendment, that would be the November election, the changes to the charter, we needed to have those materials on the May election ballot for the citizens to consider. And we have deadlines coming up right in the next few days to deal with that. And so as we began to look through the charter, we made a couple of decisions about how to focus our work. First, we focused clearly on those things that were charter issues. Secondly, we went by a bunch of things that we would consider technical changes, wording changes, places where the language we thought was perhaps inartful, but not substantively something that we thought needed to be changed. And so, given that our mandate from you continues beyond this waypoint, we elected to defer those kinds of things and try to keep the changes that you have before you to the very simple things that really have an impact on, largely on what people will be able to, or how they'll choose to vote in November. We identified some basic principles of how we wanted to approach our work. We talked about that over a couple of different meetings. I would summarize maybe 4 things that we really touched on as our objectives in trying to look at these changes. We wanted to improve the transparency of the city's ability to conduct its business. We wanted to improve accessibility of city government to citizens. We wanted to improve accountability of all of us collectively for the work that we do on behalf of citizens. And we wanted to keep the nature of our work at what one of the committee members phrased as at a constitutional level. We wanted to stay at the level of broad guidance to the council, as opposed to more of a statutory, very specific, detailed instructions to you of how to do the work. And I think we've succeeded. In doing that. Mr. Gall mentioned our request to you to pursue outside counsel, which we think has been helpful, and we think will be helpful, particularly going forward. We have a number of questions on some of those other issues that we want to consider as we move forward. And before I talk about the provisions, that's really, I think the last issue I'll touch on, just from a context standpoint, is there were some issues in the chapters that we looked at, and a number of other chapters we didn't even look at all that we believe is our work going forward, including potentially some technical language cleanup issues as well as further substantive issues. And so we expect to be back to you, but on things that aren't so time sensitive because they aren't directly related to language. As Mr. Gall said, we subdivided the work rather than trying to provide you with a single title that encompassed everything. We thought these proposed changes were bite-sized enough that we wanted them to each be able to stand on their own and not have concerns about any particular one of them basically make it impossible to adopt others. And so we've brought you 5 titles to represent 5 different changes. If you accept all of our recommendations, you would put all 5 of those on the ballot, and the citizens would independently be able to choose yes or no on each of the 5 of them, and so they could choose to approve any or all or none of them. What I'd like to do then is go through the 5 titles that you have and just speak briefly about what the title encompasses, and maybe give you a bit of a summary of our discussion. I'll start with Exhibit A on page 5 of your packet. Which is the method of electing counselors. As you know, today we elect our counselors on a by-position basis. Each position is numbered, and someone choosing to run for council picks a position number to file for and run. We recommend restoring the circumstance that existed prior to 2005, when we had a system of election where all of the counselors were on a single ballot. And there were a number of votes cast based on the number of vacant positions at that time, and the top vote getters filling those positions would be elected to the council. And so, as we're currently structured, and assuming there isn't a circumstance like a filling a vacancy or something like that, there would be 3 council positions up at each election, and however many people ran would be on a single ballot, and the top 3 vote getters would would be elected. We spent quite a bit of time talking about this provision. On the one hand, if you particularly have a platform or an issue or a concern that you want to run based on a particular issue against a particular counselor, a position system makes that easier to do. On the other hand, we had a lot of discussion about the fact that really is a fairly confrontational way to run for council. You got to pick a person or pick a seat that you're going to run against, and both systems are a little bit subject to potentially being gamed in terms of when people choose to file or withdraw filing or those kinds of things. And so we ended up landing on the notion of a single slate or a single ballot of all of the positions was the best way to encourage the most participation, the most candidates running. And if you recall, elections prior to 2005, we had some doozies with upwards of a dozen candidates at a time, and a good vigorous competition for those positions. The second ballot title is Exhibit C on page 7, and it deals with council rules. You have council rules now. We spent some time talking about the fact that sometimes they're not clear or well known, and additionally, as members join the council, there's not really a built-in process where they become aware of those rules necessarily, and so we recommend a provision that requires you every other year after each general election, where potentially new councilors come on to the body, to adopt rules, and that gives you an opportunity to consider those rules, make changes to them. If nothing else, just look at them and talk about them and be aware of them. And if you're new to the council, have an opportunity to be exposed to them. We spent some time talking about should we be prescriptive about what are in those rules, and again, falling back to that notion of being constitutional rather than statutory in nature. We elected not to simply require that you do the piece of work, but what you do with that work is really completely under your control. The third of the 5 is Exhibit E on page 9 of your packet, and it's the issue of public comment. We spent some time responding to, I think, some concern. How widespread in the community, I can't say, but concern about the ability to make public comment at council meetings. In our own process, we took public comment at each of our meetings, or provided the opportunity for public comment. We expanded that to being comment both at the beginning and at the end of meetings. We think general public comment is a good thing. You currently, of course, do what's statutorily required in terms of providing comment on public hearings on land use issues and those sorts of things, as well on ordinance changes. But there are times where you might have business that doesn't have statutorily required public comment period. And so this ballot title proposes that you be required to open a general public comment period at each regular council meeting. A regular council meeting is any meeting that this counts as a regular meeting where you've provided notice and are able to conduct business. And again, we spent some time talking about should we be prescriptive about when that occurs, or how long it should be, or times, or any of those kinds of things. And we kept our recommendation at that constitutional level of we think you should do it. How you manage how you do it continues to be something completely within your control as a council. The fourth ballot title is Exhibit G on page 11, and it deals with term limits. And here I want to talk about something that we recommended to you and something we chose not to make a recommendation to you on. We recommended that you establish term limits, or that we recommended the voters the establishment of term limits for councilors. And this is one where there was fairly sharp disagreement amongst the members of the committee on whether there should be term limits or not. In the end, we came to consensus on recommending no more than 3 consecutive terms of service on the council. A couple of observations about that. That would mean at the end of 3 consecutive terms, if someone chose to, they could sit out an election, and if the voters chose to return them to the council after that, that would be allowable under the charter provisions. In response to some questions earlier tonight, this doesn't include any kind of phase-in language, and so this would go into effect, again, thinking about getting this on the ballot so it affects the November elections. If this were to be recommended to the ballot and then passed by the citizens, it would be in effect for the November 2014 election, and so council members who have served 3 terms would not be eligible to run again. Similarly, going forward, if someone is appointed to a partial terms count. That's part of how we got to 3 terms as the number that we chose, balancing all those kinds of factors of how would you make this work going forward. We talked about the mayor's position both in terms of term limits and in terms of the length of the term, which is currently 2 years. And we chose on balance not to recommend changes to either of those things. We think the 2-year election cycle is a good period of time for the mayor. It allows regular connection with the voters if the mayor chooses to run for re-election. If the mayor has gotten into issues where there's controversy or questions about performance or those kinds of things, at a 2-year term, they tend to still be very fresh in the voters' minds, and so they've got a regular opportunity to hold the mayor accountable. Because of that regular opportunity to hold the mayor accountable, we didn't think that a term limit was necessary for the mayor's position, and so we didn't recommend a change with respect to that. And then the last
Question.
Yes.
So in the ballot title on Exhibit G, under summary 1, 2, third sentence, amends Section 29 terms by adding the language of irrespective of any applicable term limit. Where in that sentence are we adding that? At the end of the sentence? Because currently it says the term of an officer elected at a general election begins at the first council meeting of the year immediately after the election and continues until the successor qualifies.
It's at the end of the sentence.
And assumes the office irrespective of any applicable term limit. Okay. Do we think that that's confusing to the voters? And is there a possibly?
Well, what we did with that change was assure that there's continuous representation, that we don't have a vacancy created. You're right. So that probably merits more explanation than what we can simply do in the limited words of the ballot title and the ballot explanation. But that's a good catch. The other piece that we didn't talk about in any detail, the Section 25 language during the work session, that was the language I was trying to remember. We correct an error where there's incorrect language about every other general election when it's actually every general election since it's a 2-year term. If there are no other questions, then let me plug on to Exhibit I on page 13, which deals with vacancies and filling vacancies. And we do a few things here that we think on balance improve the charter with respect to those positions. We clarify that if you're elected to a different city office, if you are a councilor and are elected mayor, for example, that creates a vacancy in your existing position. We tighten up and are more specific with the language that currently exists about when a vacancy occurs for non-attendance at meetings without authorization from the council, and we changed that language to being all meetings in a 60-day period. We think that's consistent with the intent of the existing language of 3 consecutive regular council meetings, but regular council meetings don't actually have a calendar that necessarily attaches to them, and so we think this improves how that language tracks. We also put a time limit on you to require that you act relatively quickly to fill vacancies. We think that's important when the citizens aren't fully represented on the body that you act. And what we basically do is require an appointment within 45 days if less than 13 months remain on a council term. And then we change some maybe language to shall be filled by majority vote of the remaining council members. With that, Vice Chair Shannon would be happy to answer any really difficult questions you have. I'd be happy to tackle the easy ones.
And actually, probably one of my only comments is Pat's very articulate on what the committee did. I just want to appreciate the clarity and the way that we're getting to a charter revision this time than perhaps 2 years ago. So thank you for that.
I'd be happy to take any questions.
Council, do you want to take public testimony and then have Chair Allen and Chair Shannon return? Okay. Thank you both. So now we're going to move to a public hearing. Sylvia, want to read the script, please?
Yes, I can read the legislative script. It's really not necessary unless you want me to.
Go ahead, please.
Do
you have any forms? No.
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on Resolution 2014-013, a resolution approving ballot titles and explanatory statements and submitting proposed charter amendments to city voters. The purpose of the hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said item. The order of business the council will follow in conducting this hearing is to hear a staff report, which they've already heard, receive correspondence, receive public testimony, receive additional comments from staff. Questions from the governing body will follow. The hearing will then be closed. No further testimony will be received. Discussion by the council will follow. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor and/or chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak. Any questions should be addressed through the mayor or the chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. Please limit your testimony to 4 minutes unless otherwise specified by the council.
Okay, so now is the time that the public has an opportunity to comment on any of the ballot titles or the explanatory statements. I currently don't have any forms. Okay. Currently. So.
Thank you, Anthony Bevel.
Mr. Bevel,
Sherwood.
can you just wait a minute, please? Would the council be open to not necessarily staying at the 4-minute time limit, since we have 5 ballot titles and 5 explanatory statements? So,
What would you propose?
You're saying
Allow them to go like 6 minutes, maybe 5, 6?
I guess we'll go with 6, and if Mr. Bevel has more comments, we'll.
I have no objection.
Okay.
We won't have
Yeah.
Okay,
so many.
so please go ahead.
Yeah, Anthony Bevel, Southwest Lindley, Sherwood. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I think I only have one very, very short comment. I think 3 terms for council membership is way too long. 2 terms is very adequate. First term, you're learning all the ropes. You know where the bodies lie. Second term, you can get your pet projects completed. That's ample, ample, ample time. I mean, 12 years in anything, in a volunteer position. I mean, people get stale. I believe, they get really stale, tired, and they look at the job as, oh, ho-hum, I've got this thing, I've got it, I don't want to use the word, I have a handle on the job, I don't really need to put work into it. People begin to scratch each other's back, and 3 terms, way too many. Thank you. 2 terms, adequate.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And bring Chair Allen and Chair Shannon back up. Oops. Chair Allen and Chair Shannon back up, please. Would you like to give any feedback regarding Mr. Bevel's comment on term limits?
Yeah, I can speak just generally to that. This was an issue that we probably had some of the biggest division of opinion within the committee on. Some of us were of a mind very similar to Mr. Bevel's. Others of us think that there's actually a 4-year term limit, and the voters get a say every 4 years. And if the voters want to continue someone in office, that should be their call. And so this really was this really represents a compromise decision that those who were in favor of term limits and those who were generally opposed could live with. I can't fault Mr. Bevel's comments. I think that was certainly a position on the group. This is where we got to a place that we could resolve that made sense. We would recommend you put this to the voters and see where they stand.
Okay.
Neil, anything you want to add?
Nope. No.
Okay. Does anyone on the council have any questions for the committee, chair or vice chair? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mayor Middleton?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any comments or recommendations that you'd like to impart on us right now?
No, I was good with all of them.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure everybody on the council has had an opportunity to read the explanatory statements. I have one suggestion on the first ballot title on page 6. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. The measure would return city elections to the former election process in which candidates did not indicate numbers, but instead candidates would file to run for the city council, and the candidates with the most votes from the electorate would be elected as city councilors to fill. Currently reads vacant, and I'm not sure that a seat is always vacant, so I was wondering if we would consider an amendment to the word available
Or open.
or open.
I like open.
Open, okay. So can we please make that one amendment? And do we need to correspondingly reference the ballot title as well, or?
I'll need to proof it. And what we ought to do is just finish up where you want to be, then I want to retreat to a room and just make sure everything
Okay.
reads correctly.
Okay. In the ballot title, I think it doesn't say open or
Right.
available,
This is
so I
only
think
an
it's fine.
explanatory statement, yeah.
Okay. I think that was my only revision.
There are two other issues that I might just point out.
Okay. Yes,
One-
please.
One has to do with the, when does this language start on term limits? I want to defer that for one moment.
Okay.
Because there was an issue over the amendment to section 29.
Right, irrespective.
terms. Yeah, the language was said to be awkward, and perhaps you want to start that sentence with something like, notwithstanding the applicable term limits imposed by this charter, comma, and then scratch the language that's in bold at the end. It makes it a little less awkward. So you start with, notwithstanding the applicable term limits imposed by this charter, the term of an officer elected at a general election begins at the first council meeting of the year immediately after the election and continues until the successor qualifies and assumes the office, period. And I'm reading from Exhibit K, which is the very last page of the council packet.
Oh, under your summary?
Right.
Okay,
These are the actual amendments that would go into the charter.
right.
So let me read it again if you want me to.
Yes, please.
Okay, so start with notwithstanding,
Under term limits,
under terms, 29.
yes.
So start with, notwithstanding the applicable term limits imposed by this charter, comma. Then all the rest of the language there, you would not capitalize the term, and then you would put a period after office.
And okay, see what you mean. So we're going to strike that. Okay.
The last item has to do with, and it's the most complicated, is section 24. When do term limits begin?
Right.
And what is a term? You have 4-year terms now. There's an argument that could be made that a partial term is a term. There's also an argument that it's 4 years, so somebody starting with less than 4 years would not be subject to a 3-term limit. There are arguments that can be made by lawyers on both ends. What you've gotten from your regular city attorney are 2 alternatives. I think you have them for, with an email from Chad Jacobs, or do you not have them?
We don't have those. Okay.
Sorry. Let me give you a minute to read them.
Okay,
so-
thank you. have this?
No.
I'll read it all. Yes. Change that. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Is he on a landline or is he on his phone? Council, have you had enough time to review it?
Council, is it kosher for me to make a comment?
Sure, come up. This is really important. I don't want to miss out.
I just wanted to get on the record because this was discussed briefly in the work session, and we had some conversation around the table with the members of the committee. That notion of a compromise position of 3 terms, I think our consensus is that that's an ample period of time that of the versions that you're looking at, that our consensus would be the partials should count as terms as you look at what you have there. I'm not familiar with the language you're looking at, but I just want to make sure we got that on the record too.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Council President, and for the
Go
record, a little more explanatory on that. It isn't unheard of that people are appointed to council with a few months remaining in their term. And it was explained to me in work session. I just want to say this publicly, that scenario would give a person that type of an appointment really only 2 terms plus a little bit, which is really not uncommon. At least over the last 20 years, we've seen it happen where, without it being 3, that person would really only have 1 plus a little bit. And so that's good reasoning, in my opinion.
Good reasoning to,
Make it 3,
Make it 3.
to keep it as 3 terms
Oh,
right, but
Rather than 2. Is what
rather than 2. I'm supporting it as it reads now.
so are you supporting not counting a partial term?
No.
Oh, no, I'm supporting
Partial
counting the
terms.
partial term because that
Plus-
could be only a few months, possibly.
Plus 2 more.
Correct.
Okay.
The partial term counts as a term. That's how
Okay.
it was explained to me.
How Chair Allen described it.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Other comments from council?
I had a question on the
Language?
Yeah. So on the first section, it seems to in the very last sentence, counselors in office on May 20th, 2014 shall be eligible to serve, and then you choose 1, 2, 3 successive 4-year terms upon the expiration of their current term. Okay, so that seems to be exactly an opposite of what Chair Allen is talking about, that you would basically be entitled to, if you had already served 3 additional terms. So I would be against that because that would be against what the committee is recommending to us. So then I guess you would go to the second ballot title, term limits. And I agree with Chair Allen and the committee that the current and previous consecutive terms of counselors in office shall be considered in this calculation of consecutive terms for the limitations imposed in this section.
That makes more sense. It is clearer.
It seems more clear to them. But we have to do the insertion here. You know, even though it's laid out for us, there are. So I would recommend that in the second on ballot title term limit paragraph that we approve that portion of it and go with shall.
The council has
Mr.
two
Yeah.
bracketed portions about 2 years. Do you want to use the 2-year break-off point? Or do you want to just have any partial count as a term?
I think the simplest would be any partial term counts as a consecutive term.
Okay.
I think the 2 years more clear. Because the intent is 3 terms. And so, like Councilor Grant said, if you end up being appointed and there's 2 months left, then that's your term, and then you really only get 2 terms.
But isn't the committee suggesting any partial is considered
Yeah,
one?
if I could
What
invite
do you
myself
think?
up again, that has
I'd love- yeah, I'd
that
love
has
to
the
hear.
effect of making the term limit 14 years for someone who's appointed just
Yes.
at the inside limit of that 2 years, and so we would suggest not. If you're going to leave the term limit at 3 terms, then a month counts. Any portion of that third term counts, and that's part of the justification for why 3 would be the appropriate number.
Okay.
So partial's 1 term.
Yeah,
And then you would have 2 more consecutive, and then you would be done
right,
until you took a break and maybe came back later if possible.
right.
Okay,
You'd basically always be eligible for 8 plus whatever the.
Yes,
correct. Not to exceed 12, but we don't have
Right.
that.
And this additional language that you're looking at is just options for your consideration.
Yes.
If you wanted to anticipate those scenarios. I mean, there's so many different scenarios. These are just 2. I think the one that's important is the second one, which Councilor Clark said, are the folks that are currently sitting in office. If the term limit amendment passes, are you subject to those term limits? And the consensus that I heard is yes, from the committee, that was their intent. So the question is, do we need to be that specific in the charter amendment or the explanatory statement? Or can you just stick with the language that was originally proposed?
I think the clearer the better when you're writing a ballot title.
Look at section 24 as it's proposed to be amended. Right now, it reads, at each general
3
election.
consecutive terms.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
At each general election, we'd strike the words after the adoption. 3 councilors will be elected for 4-year terms. No councilor shall serve on the council for more than 3 consecutive terms. How about including any partial term as a
Okay.
councilor?
Sure.
Sounds good.
And
Okay,
then
and
how do we
again, I'm
clarify
going to
that?
need to reconcile all of that with the explanatory statement and bring it back to you. And I can do that tonight if I.
Okay.
So what I've heard, Madam President, is 3 things. One is the open seat one.
Yes.
The changing of the language from irrespective at the end to notwithstanding at the
Correct.
beginning on 29. And then on 24, to add the words at the end after consecutive terms, including any partial term as a councilor.
Correct.
Those are the 3 items.
Correct.
Okay. If the
Okay.
council could,
So-
unless there's anybody else that wants to say anything, what I'll do is to retire and make sure that I've got the language of the explanatory statement to match what we've done with the ballot matters themselves, and maybe for about 20 minutes for me
Okay.
to do that, and then we can come back.
Okay. So we'll,
Does this I'm
ahead.
sorry, with what you just added, does
Yes.
that then cover that the sitting councilors would be, it doesn't?
It doesn't deal with any transition. Right now, it would be terms, and it applies across the board retroactively, if you will.
Okay, so it doesn't specifically deal with the transition, but you think it's implied?
I can put something into the explanatory statement that says that it is retroactive.
And that's what we're hearing. we-
That's what you yeah, I
Probably
understand you
want
want
to
to
do.
do.
Right.
All right. I will do
okay,
that.
so we'll adjourn
Oh,
for
recess.
recess, sorry. We'll recess for 20 minutes to allow council some time to make our changes.
I have one question.
Yes?
The big
prior to your recess, are you going to have the attorney review any of the other ballot titles? So we don't have to do a second recess? Or are you guys
No, I'm
prepared?
going to do all of that at once, unless you have any other.
Yeah, I didn't have any, unless other members of council have any ballot title amendments, I only had,
On the rules or the public comment, you have no additional
Nope.
revisions?
I didn't, I thought they were pretty clear.
Thank you.
Okay,
Fine with it.
so we're in recess for 20 minutes. Or less. Thank you.
We're ready to call the meeting back to order.
Okay, we'll reconvene the city council meeting to review the amended explanatory statements and ballot titles, yes. Mr. Sullivan.
Madam President, if you're prepared, everything that is not changed stays as you have it presented to you. So I'll only talk to you about the changed matters. First of all, Exhibit A, on the ballot title, the last paragraph, the sentence would read, "The former election process did not indicate position numbers so that candidates would file and the individuals receiving the most votes would be elected to fill open city council seats." So the word "open" is added. Similarly, on Exhibit B, in the fourth paragraph, the sentence would now read, "The measure would return city elections to the former election process in which candidates did not indicate position numbers, but instead candidates would file to run," scratch the "for," file to run for the city council, and the candidates with the most votes from the electorate would be elected as city councilors to fill the open seats.
Okay.
The third change would be on Exhibit G, and there are two paragraphs that are changed there. This is the ballot title for the term limits portion. The first paragraph would read, "Amend the current city charter, Chapter 7, Section 24, councilors by removing unnecessary language and adding the provision of, quote, no councilor shall serve on the council more than 3 consecutive terms," then add in, comma, "including any partial term as a councilor." Okay? And 2 paragraphs down, amend Section 29 terms by adding the following to the beginning of the section. Scratching the words "irrespective of," and it's a single word, "notwithstanding," any applicable term limits imposed by this charter, comma, and then we'd go into the remainder of the section.
Okay.
Exhibit H, fourth paragraph, this measure would amend Section 24 to read in its entirety. At each general election, 3 councilors would be elected for 4-year terms. No councilor shall serve on the council more than 3 consecutive terms, again, adding language, comma, including any partial term as a councilor, and then close the quote. Now, an explanatory sentence after that says, the term limits imposed by this charter amendment would apply to the terms of councilors now in office.
Okay.
2 paragraphs down, this measure would amend Section 29 terms to read as follows, colon, and then we scratch by adding the language of and irrespective of, then notwithstanding, again one word, any applicable term limits imposed by this charter, comma, the term of any officer elected at a general election begins at the first council meeting of the year immediately after the election and continues until the successor qualifies and assumes the office, period, scratching the irrespective language that was proposed originally. Lastly, on Exhibit K, these are reconciliations of those changes already made. I'll call them out again, the ones that are changed from the ones that you saw initially tonight. Section 24, councilors on the term limits section. At each general election, 3 councilors will be elected for 4-year terms. No councilor shall serve on the council more than 3 consecutive terms, comma, including any partial term as a councilor. The rest of the language is deleted.
Okay.
On Section 29, terms, notwithstanding, one word again, any applicable term limits imposed by this charter, comma, the term of an officer elected at a general election begins the first council meeting of the year immediately after the election and continues until the successor qualifies and assumes the office, period, end. Nothing else has changed on Exhibit K. If this is what you want, then the proper motion, and you can say so moved after I've listed it for you, is to adopt the resolution. Do you have a number?
2014-013.
Okay. With the revisions presented by the special city attorney regarding exhibits A, B, G, H, and K.
We don't need a special resolution for the amendments?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
Well, so moved.
Second.
So at this time, council, we need a motion to amend to accept the new exhibits. So we'll need a motion to amend to accept the new exhibits.
Oh, that's
that
what
you
I
have
asked.
in your-
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So a motion to amend?
Oh, okay. He was explaining that we don't need that.
It's okay.
Okay.
Why don't you
I move
do
that
your
we,
regular process.
I move that we approve the amendments to Resolution 2014-013 as described.
Second.
Thank you.
So now we have an amended resolution.
No, we have to vote on
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
the
All in favor?
amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Now I move that we approve Resolution 2014-013 as amended.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
If
Thank you,
we're done with
staff.
business, I have a walk-on resolution.
Okay, I have a couple of comments first. I
Go ahead.
wanted to obviously thank the council members that are still here, and I wanted to just briefly bring up how will we best educate the public on, obviously, Ray is here and he'll write an article or two maybe. There are other opportunities in the Archer, correct? That will be available. Will we post something on the website? Okay. And then, of course, the minutes to the Charter Review Committee are on the website if anybody's interested in those. Is there any other form of communication or education that anybody else would like to recommend? So the vote's in May. What's the May vote date?
May 20th.
20th. Okay. So if you haven't already, I know we've been under a tight schedule, but I would appreciate when councilors visit their board and commissions that they maybe take a summary. If you look at the Exhibit K sort of summarizes things that Mr. Sullivan did. Is not a bad summary. And then I did it at the library board as a draft and just asked the members of that committee to just talk to their neighbors or talk to other groups and, offer to be a resource and then direct them either to the city website or the minutes for the Charter Review Committee. So if any other board or commission that you visit, if you would kindly do that, I think that will help hopefully improve voter turnout and encourage people, I think, to start looking at the suggested changes to our charter earlier rather than later. Okay. Joe, do you have anything about that? Sylvia?
I don't have anything.
Okay. So, Councilor Grant, you said...
Yeah, I would like to walk on a resolution if I could, if we're done with the other business. There's an issue that's been hanging over our head that I'd like to move forward on, and that is the issue of the council liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. I really want to move forward on it and do that in a way that serves the citizens and also recognizes the criteria that's been communicated to us from the Chamber. So with that, I'd like to move that we...
Wait. So you say you have a walk-on resolution?
Well,
No, what's the
in other words, it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
So my resolution is I move that we appoint Councilor Langer to serve in that role as liaison to the Chamber
Thank you.
until January 2015.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table that's been seconded. I was hoping we would wait until the mayor returned and we can talk about this on the 4th, but I won't ignore the fact that there's a motion on the table, even though I would have encouraged you to wait until we were all here and we could talk about it. But there's a motion on the table and seconded. So we will take a vote on this issue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What was the total vote on? I'm sorry, I missed what we were doing on this.
Go ahead.
This was a carry-on?
Yes, it's a walk-on.
So,
Walk-on?
so Mayor, let me add, and then I'll also clarify for the record.
Yeah.
I
think he can hear.
Councilor Grant has made a motion, and the motion has been seconded. Basically, the motion is for the council to act and move in a certain direction. The motion originally stated identifying a walk-on resolution is not appropriate because we don't have legislation.
Yeah, we don't have any
Okay.
paperwork.
So there's no legislation. So basically, the motion and the second that was made is to basically move forward with an action of the council. The motion made by Councilor Grant was a motion to appoint Councilor Langer to the role of the council liaison to the chamber. Councilor Butterfield has seconded that motion. Council President Henderson is now asking for a vote on that motion.
It shows in the, in our rules though that I'm the only one that can make a, appointment, but it has to be voted on by the rest of the council, but I'm the only one that can make the vote. That means make the, nominee.
So if I may clarify for the record, and then I'll let the council, Mayor, are you indicating the council rules where that is indicated?
I believe that's where it's at. Yeah, I have it at home. Because I'm putting forward a person to be on the committee and the council approves it. It's not the council's decision.
Point of order, there's a motion and a second and a
Yeah,
call.
I just want to look something up, if you'll just give me a minute. Okay, so Mayor, I'm on page 10 of the council rules. It says council liaison. The mayor will appoint councilors to liaison positions to city commissions and committees, including ad hoc or limited term committees, as the mayor deems necessary. And then it goes on to talk about the role of the liaison member.
That's right.
So.
That's the way it's written in there.
Yes, and I'm not advocating for or against the position, but if I were to read that, the chamber is not a city board or a commission or a committee, like Parks or Planning Commission or SERPAC.
It'd be an ad hoc committee.
No, it's not an ad hoc.
No, ad hoc would be temporary, like the Charter Review Committee. At least that's how I understand ad hoc.
There's still no authority anywhere allowing you to do this.
I can't debate that over the phone right now. That is why I wanted to wait until March 4th. But this is a non-city board or a commission, and so
we do fund them to the tune of about $7,000 a year, and I understand they're not a part of us, but if we're going to have a commission, then it has to go through the same process as in the other commission. We just can't make the rules up on it.
Well, somebody needs to look into it.
Well, it comes back to that it's not a city board or commission. And the appointments are made by the mayor with the consent of the council, and so that's one step that's missed here. There's no council consent been given.
They would not have authority because it didn't matter. They had not been appointed by the mayor. You'd be making up something altogether different And you'd have to find some way of doing that, and it wouldn't be done. I don't think it could be done.
Well, just like the mayor has no authority to appoint liaisons to the chamber because it's not a city board or commission.
But if they want to act as put the person on there as a pseudo board member, then they would have to follow under the guidelines of other city board members.
So I think maybe what the mayor's getting at is that we don't have the authority as a council to assign a liaison that represents the council. Only the mayor has that authority.
To city board and commissions, which
Well,
the chamber is not a city board or a
Right, but
commission.
to any, if then we don't have the right to assign representation for ourselves, that it has to be appointed by the mayor, according to our rules.
There's nothing in the rule specific to this.
Well, the chamber is not a city commission or committee or an ad hoc committee. So if the council,
You can't just make up, then you're making up the position, and you're making up who's going to be part of the justice system. You'd have to start from ground zero, saying, we want to have this liaison, and we'd all have to pass it, and it'd all have to be voted on, that it would only have to be 4 or 5 people vote, and they have no connection with the mayor. That's why we have the commissions the way they're set.
Well, those appointments are by the consent of the council. And on all the other liaison appointments, you got the consent of the council, but on this one, you didn't ask for it.
It can't be a city deal then, if you're not going to go by the rules.
Well, there's no particular rule that actually applies to non-city boards and commissions.
so if we use an example as Robin Hood, Councilor Grant is the representative, were you appointed or you've just been in that role?
We decided as council that I would fill that role.
No, he appointed you.
I don't.
No, the problem
I've
is
been
there
doing-
is no
I was
appointment.
doing it prior to that.
Yeah.
I was doing it when Mayor Mays was mayor.
Right.
But
And I think the
know that
problem
we-
with, go ahead.
You know, I feel that we all have opinions on this, and I feel that while they're all valid, they're also fairly well set. And that's why I would like to move forward on this. It's hanging over our heads. It's been moved and seconded. And I'd like to call for the question, and we can discuss our opinions for the rest of the year. But right now, we've been discussing our opinions for way too long, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that in that same vein, the mayor has appointed me. And so I would like to hear, being that I attended 30 events out of 35, and I volunteered at both of the fundraising events for 2 hours each, why there seems to be a problem with that continuation. The liaison position it's arduous. There's lots of meetings involved, as opposed to last year, the library liaison that Linda attended, it was 6 meetings. She attended 4 of them. The cultural
I
arts.
think this really is the right place or the right time to do this tonight. I think it should be done next meeting.
Because I think there should be some discussion about it.
We need
I
to
think there
have-
needs to be explanation.
I need finality from legal, which I don't think it's legal. We're just trying to do something real quick now, possibly because I'm not there and it's easier to slip it through. But I just don't believe that that's the way the process is meant to work.
Well, let's all vote.
Yeah,
And I'm hearing that the mayor will likely vote no, but that's his right, and I believe it's time to vote.
Well, I believe this is a position of service, and I'm happy to serve wherever the mayor wants me to serve, because that is the way that the council rules read.
Yeah, I thought we already voted. I already heard.
Did we vote? Okay.
No, we have not voted.
Let's vote.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. There's a first and a second to appoint Councilor Langer to the liaison board position for the chamber, which is not a board, city board or commission. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All against, vote nay.
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 So motion passes 4-3.
I think that
Okay.
was really a poor way of doing the process, the backdoor way you people did it there. That's just my comment.
Well, you had 2 months to get it settled, Mayor, and so that time's up.
There was plenty of time
Okay.
to do this.
We can talk about this in the future.
I agree.
We're adjourned for the evening. Thank you. Oh, one other thing is today is Sylvia's birthday, and we have a card